Welcome back to Studio Chatter. It's reported that every 73 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. The numbers are staggering, but the scars left behind are life-changing. To talk more about how we can find help, welcome Brittney Herman from the We Will organization to the Chatter. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's so good to be back. I'm glad to be here.
Time.
Yes.
Thanks for being here to educate us further.
Those numbers are staggering and scary. 73
they
seconds.
Are. Yeah, they're really difficult to listen to and to understand. Also, in Utah, it's actually a little bit higher because in Utah, 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence during her lifetime, whereas in the rest of the nation, the average is 1 in 5. It's actually the only violent crime in Utah where the rates are higher than the rest of the nation.
I was going to say, and why? Why?
Do
we know?
I mean, personally, I believe it's lack of education, and that's what my studies show, and that's what my nonprofit is all about, is bringing this education to people so that way they understand sexual assault and understand it's wrong, and we can prevent it through education.
So what is We Will? Is that?
Yes, so We Will is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the prevention and mitigation of sexual assault, which we do through formal and informal education, community growth, and survivor support. The formal and informal education looks like, community events or various resources on our website for parents or for survivors. Community growth is a similar thing, and then survivor support is sharing their stories and helping them recognize the resources available to them.
Wow. So what is the actual definition, if you will, of sexual assault?
So sexual assault kind of has a lot of different definitions that people qualify it as, but the definition that I prefer to use is any sexual act that was not consented to. So any non-consensual sexual act.
And sometimes when we're in a relationship, we feel like that's given that person maybe the permission to do whatever.
Yeah, and I think
we love them or whatever, and maybe that's something to be said about a Utah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially in Utah where sexual education is kind of so limited, that's part of the problem, is that people in relationships think that there's continuous consent, whereas that's not the case, or they don't understand that they need consent in any given situation, so they don't pursue it, and then when things go too far, for one person, that person is forever traumatized.
Wow, this is tough. Like, how widespread is this? And do you have numbers to back up your information?
Yes, so it's 1 in 3 women in Utah, and the rest of the nation is about 1 in 5. But it really varies. So in New Jersey, for example, the rate is incredibly low. It's 16.3 for every 100,000 people experience a sexual assault, and that's fairly low. Whereas in Alaska, it's 116 per 100,000 persons. So those numbers are, I'm sorry, those aren't sexual assault, those are rape numbers. Okay. And so it really varies by state, and it varies by people's experiences, but those are the numbers. They're hard to recognize.
Wow. Do you think in Utah, is it because the conversation is so taboo and just because nobody wants to talk about it, or what is the difference?
And I wonder too, with our main religion focus, that it says abstinence, and shying away from that. So if it does happen, there's a sense of guilt
and shame,
or shame, and so they don't dare reach out or say something. I don't know. I just feel like that has something.
That's very similar to the experience that I had. I was sexually assaulted, but I thought I'd put myself in this situation. There was this cultural shame around it that then I didn't seek help and I didn't even initially recognize a sexual assault. And that's why I believe education is so critically important, is because it's not only teaching would-be perpetrators what is wrong, but it's teaching would-be victims what is wrong as well, so that way they can seek help if something happens to them. And to answer your question about Utah, I do believe it's because it is so taboo. I completed a study last year that surveyed the states with the highest rate of rape and the states with the lowest rate of rape and their sexual education laws, and found a very strong correlation between the quality and quantity of sexual education and the rate of sexual assault, meaning that sexual education and talking about sex helps to reduce the rates of sexual assault. And none of these conversations have to be overtly very sexual. It's just consent is an everyday topic that comes up every day in non-sexual situations, but it's so important to preventing sexual assault.
Okay. And the perpetrators might be someone you know.
They're
not
most often someone
strangers.
you know.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe it's 87% of cases, it's someone that the victim knows.
That high?
Yes,
Wow.
it's incredibly high. It's acquaintance sexual assault very frequently. It's familial sexual assault, or oftentimes it's someone that you love. I mean, for me, it was a boyfriend at the time, and it was, you know, it was someone that I knew, and I thought I knew quite intimately, and knew that that would never happen to me.
Brittney, can you tell us about the trauma that a survivor goes through?
Right.
Oh, trauma is so different for every survivor. For me personally, it was PTSD, suicidal thoughts, random little things would trigger me and I'd have like a panic attack. I just couldn't function. I couldn't get through my day. I developed an eating disorder. Just a vast amount of horrible things happen when you have been sexually assaulted because you don't know how to process that trauma. Sexual assault and trauma in general rewires your brain to think in a different way, and you have to shift away from that. Survivors struggle with all manner of symptoms after their sexual assault, and it's something that we do need to take incredibly seriously and to let them know what resources are there.
So do you think that those side effects were worse because you didn't talk about it? Like if you were able to talk to someone immediately, do you think that that would have helped some of that side effect?
Absolutely, because I carried around guilt and shame for years for something that I didn't even do on purpose.
Wow.
And
was done to you.
Exactly, what was done to me. And I like talked negatively to myself about what had happened, but I didn't recognize that the trauma was connected to it. And it was once I was able to get into therapy and speak about it and to feel more open about my experience that I really began to heal. And that's the case for most survivors. I had another incident relatively recently with a sexual assault that because I knew what resources were available, I was immediately able to speak up about it. And although I don't know if I'm truly healed from that, it was much easier to get through.
So where is the best place to reach out if something like this has happened? What's your first best place?
The best place to reach out is to someone in your community, your support network. So that can be a family member, and if you have a family member who you believe is willing to support you, I believe that you should reach out to them. If not, then a close friend. And if a close friend isn't available, then some other authority figure in your life. So perhaps a teacher, a church leader, someone like that who will be able to help you through the experience.
At what point do you go to the police?
Right.
That is such a tricky thing for survivors because some survivors don't want to go to the police because things will be dredged up from their past, or simply they're just not interested in reliving the trauma. They just want to forget about it and leave it alone. So it really is up to the survivor what they are interested in doing. I think that the point to go to the police is at any point in which you feel comfortable. I went to the police for my first sexual assault 3 years after it happened. I just was not ready before then. And my more recent one, it took me a day. It didn't take me any time at all. So I think the best time is when the survivor's ready, because if you're not ready yet, you're going to re-trigger yourself and put yourself further in trauma.
Is it ever too late?
Right.
No, it's never too late. It might be too late to seek legal ramifications for the individual, but it's never too late to report them, to let the community know that they are potentially dangerous to others, or to just get that closure for yourself.
Is We Will involved in any type of legislation?
Yes, absolutely. We Will is massively involved in legislation.
That's
It's
good
one
to
of our
hear.
biggest things, yes, because we do believe, and the studies have shown, the research shows that sexual education can reduce the rate of sexual assault. So my goal, and We Will's goal, is to get that sexual education, which has been proven to reduce the rate, into our public schools in such a way that it reduces sexual assault while still leaving to parents the opportunity to dictate what their child learns. So this looks like having opt-in programs where the parent has the choice on whether their student will receive this education, but also educating all parents of the curriculum that will be taught involving consent, coercion, refusal skills.
So Brittney, what specific legislation are you working on right now?
So We Will has put forth 2 bills to the Utah legislators. The first is to define consent, because consent is actually not defined in Utah laws. If you go to the definition of consent, it only says what consent is not, but that doesn't tell us what it is. Consent is a freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement between two parties. That's as simple as it is, and that's the definition that we want Utah to adopt.
Do other states have that description?
So other states do not yet have that description.
So we would
Pennsylvania, yes, Pennsylvania is working on it. There are a couple of other states that are working on it. I've been working with the Consent Awareness Network who developed that definition, and they're working all across the United States to bring that definition to the states. And then additionally, we have a health education amendments bill, which would introduce the concepts of consent, coercion, and further codify refusal skills in Utah education. And that's something that I've been working with We Will Utah on, which is a state chapter of We Will, because now We Will has grown so much that we have state chapters as well, which I'm so thankful for.
Congratulations.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
How long ago did you start this up?
Just over a year. So
No way. So when you were here last, you had just started
just
this.
barely started, I
And
think a
look
few
at
months
it.
prior. I know, it's because people believe in this. It's so important people understand how important it is to prevent assault rather than simply assisting survivors, even though that's incredibly important as well. We want to get it before it happens.
Well, Brittney, I think our culture right now is in a place where they can talk about certain things, and I like, just with the pandemic, I've like, things aren't a light switch, they're more like a dial. And this has been talked about and talked about,
pendulum
and
that's
now
kind of
it can just
swinging.
move forward and see
Yes, we're ready,
traction
and it's
yes.
growing faster than I could have ever anticipated.
Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
Good
thank
for you.
Yeah, good
Good
for
for you.
everyone.
And then on the other end, you've wrote a book.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about
Yes,
that.
I actually brought you guys copies of the
You
book.
did?
Yeah, so I'll hold one and then you can
Oh,
pass
thank
those.
you.
So this book is called Do You Want a Cookie? It's a children's book, and it teaches children about consent in everyday situations. We will actually allows it for free download for anybody who's interested in it. And then copies, I'm not sure of the exact price right now, but I believe they're only $7. So this is meant to be a resource for parents or caregivers or potentially teachers. And really, it has to start a portion that says Dear Adult. And it just talks about what this book is meant to do, just to teach about consent in innocuous situations. So, you know, the whole concept of do you want a cookie? You wouldn't offer your friend a cookie or force them to eat a cookie if they didn't want to, so you ask consent. And obviously we can see the parallel there. So there are various scenes that take a part in the book. And at the end of the book, there's an appendix that is the most helpful tool for parents and teachers and caregivers. Because what it does is each scene aligns with a concept of consent that's important for children to learn in order to prevent sexual assault. And so this just aligns every single scene and how to teach your children about consent from this. Yeah, and it's so
Little
great because
educational
That's
tool.
amazing.
exactly. And once you read it to your children as they get older, you can start introducing those sexual concepts to them. I mean, even if they're an adult, you can still show them this, and it just
Pardon, I just want to look this
okay.
Wow.
Oh, you are
No, I
doing
think
such
that's great.
important work. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your recent graduation from
Thank
BYU
you.
Law
Thank
School.
you.
You're going
Awesome.
They're so
places,
lucky
girl.
to have you.
Thank
Just a
you.
year ago when we met her, like we could see that, but just to look back and think of the growth in the past year.
I know, and I even told you guys about this book during that
I
interview. It's like,
remember.
it's gonna happen, and it's happened. It's here. It's tangible.
my
So
gosh.
I'm glad you guys can enjoy it with me.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Best of luck.
Keep up the great work. There's more studio chatter coming up.